AI, introducing AI in the physical world is problematic because we actually don't have an efficient way of getting that data that we need. So, people are using all kinds of different data sources and trying to develop something with it. And we see this as a solution that we could provide and that we actually have it. In terms of entering a market and scaling in a market or growing your business, you really have to look at your differentiation. You need to know if obviously who your customers are, who your ICP is, but you really need to understand one, your value proposition, and two, your differentiation. How are you different?
Hello and welcome to the Auto Intel podcast, the show where we dive deep into the challenges and opportunities shaping the world of engineering and software. Our guest today is Srinivas Krishna, a true innovator in the world of IT and digital technology. He started out as a celebrated filmmaker with award winning work shown at festivals like TIFF and Cannes. But over time, Srinivas shifted his focus to immersive media and augmented reality, creating powerful experiences and that have been featured at Google I/O and on NBC. Today, he is the founder and CEO of Geogram, an AI platform that helps businesses manage their physical operations digitally. We're excited to hear his insights on how tech leaders can build for the future and the strategies for sustainable growth that enable vision, creativity, and smart tech to the real impact. Let's get into it. Hi, Srinivas. Thanks for being on the show.
My pleasure, Nishant. It's great to be here.
Srinivas, I wanted to know why you moved from filmmaking where you had so much success into Geogram. What's the story behind it?
That's a great question. Well, let me explain what Geogram does first. Geogram is an computer vision AI that aggregates data from any number of cameras in a location, be they smartphones to mounted cameras, and then synthesizes that data to predict the positions, trajectories, and velocities of the objects that are detected, and interprets the scene and visualizes it for you like a video game replaying the world. So you get two things. You get a 3D map that's real time of what's happening in a location, and you get the data that goes with it. So that's a far stretch from, acting in front of a camera, writing scripts, directing them, producing and handling logistics. That's where I started a long time ago. So my journey is really one of that has been defined by cameras and the things that you do with cameras. Here's what I learned, over the years that one, when I started in filmmaking, it was the analog era, where you actually used film. What I understood is to create an image, you need to understand the context and define the context in which that image is captured for that image to be able to tell a story. So a single image tells a small story, but image after image after image, when put together into a sequence, gives you a narrative, okay, that illuminates the world in which that action is taking place. So you get an entire context. So context is the first thing. And context is defined by location. Cameras always are situated somewhere, and that's the eye of the viewer. And when you go from shot to shot to shot, you're changing the position of the viewer. So unlike in the world where we only see from where we stand, in a film, you see from multiple different positions in the world. You go very close into things, you can see giant, perspective, like godlike perspective. So this idea of perspective, location is really important. Context, location. I got an augmented reality when I was asked to do, a bunch of films for the Winter Olympics. It was a commission. And as part of that, they wanted to do geolocated, video streaming to users on the smartphone at the Olympics. This was a new thing in the world in 2009 because the smartphone had just come out. And that was my introduction to the smartphone. I used to have a Nokia and a BlackBerry. I had two phones, right? And what I saw with the iPhone was a camera connected to computer with a pretty good display, all communicating with the internet. And what I saw then was here is an image, here is a display, here is context that is delivered by the computational power of that phone, and location delivered by the internet and GPS. And so now what you're able to do is understand and track that device in 3D space. And so what I guess I brought to the table in what is fundamentally an IT services, which was completely new to me when they asked me to do this kind of thing, was this set of insights, and perspective, which was fundamentally different from the scientists and engineers that I was asked to work with to develop some of these products. They came from a 2D understanding of computing, and databases, X and Y. I said, well, when that mobile computing unit with sensors is moving around in the world, that smartphone, there's a Z axis and there's time. Now we have a different kind of time series data that is, geospatial. And this is at the root of augmented reality technologies, as I came to learn, that you need to know where the devices are in real time so that you can then deliver content to them in relation to their positions. And this enables, in fact, multi-user shared experiences, and is basically the infrastructure, the technical infrastructure for AR. We had for about 5, 6 years, I ran that AR business, took over my film business. I became an AR pioneer. No one else was doing it in 2011 and 12. And so that gave me a head start. And I ran a very successful AR business. And at some point, I guess I realized maybe I'm not going to make films for the short term. And maybe even now it's turned out to be almost 15 years.
Right. So, I mean, does Geogram still have applications for the live events and the other things you have it, or has it shifted now to a different application completely with, tracking of so much devices and you can geospatially locate so much things?
It's a wonderful question, and it makes me think about the importance of the sector you're addressing for your application, the initial use cases, and how those choices you make can help your business grow or kill your business. So when we had come up with this new solution and we went back to, some of our customers in the events industry, we realized two things. One, they loved the solution, but there was no single buyer in this ecosystem who wanted to own the problem and pay for it, right? So, and that's suddenly we realized, you have a lot of different contractors managing a project. And this is a solution that requires the involvement of all these different contractors, but who's going to pay for it then? And this became a challenge, People loved it. They recognized the problem. They thought this could be a great solution, but can't you get them to pay for it? Can't you get this person to pay for it? And you go around the block once or twice, and you realize, you know what? No one's going to pay for this. It's going to take a lot of buyer education. And two, I'm not sure they make enough money in this sector to pay for this innovation to help us grow. And that got us on a journey, really looking at different sectors that manage physical operations, for whom that's the center of their business. And that's a huge part of our world economy, is still the physical economy, logistics, production. We looked at construction, we looked at warehouses, we looked at even shipbuilding. Manufacturing, we looked at also. We found all of them to be in different stages of their digital transformation journey. So I looked around in my country, Canada, where we're headquartered, and we looked at, oil and gas, thought that's interesting, but we looked at mining and we said, this is one of Canada's largest industries, and they have an obvious problem because we saw that increasingly they're trying to manage their mines remotely through data, and they have multiple sources of data. They have machines that give them data, the machines that operate these mines, but they have many places where they don't have data in their operations, people, tools, consumables, materials, and they don't have really a very good line of sight to what's happening in the
Yeah.
mine. It's underground. And increasingly they're pulling their foremen from the mine to remote centers. So we thought we can solve their problems. And secondly, once a mine is operational, they're making, they've de-risked the mine, the exploration. It's really about increasing yield and protecting the safety of their workers in what is ultimately a very hazardous environment. And so I thought these are problems we can solve. We can solve it, and they have the money to pay for it. So now, I who have 6 months ago, well, maybe about 1 year ago, knew nothing about mining, have now secured a really excellent 6-month pilot project to implement our solution in a mine with Canada's largest underground mining OEM and the Center for Smart Mining. And so this is how we arrived at our beachhead customer segment.
Can you talk a little bit about the pilot project? So, what problems you're trying to solve at this? Is it operations? Is it optimizing their processes? Is it something else? What you're trying to achieve with that project?
Yeah, it's a great question. Pilots are interesting opportunities to really both refine your solution and customize it to learn as a IT company, as a developer, and also to teach your stakeholders and partners. So our promise, what we deliver out of the box, we set up cameras in an environment. We can use the existing cameras, we augment them with other cameras, is basically the tracking of everything in it, that's happening inside. So today, what mines are able to do is automate, subsystems in their mine. What I mean by that is you have an autonomous or semi-autonomous vehicle or machine, okay? But it's operating in an environment that is difficult to automate. People who are drilling in rocks using tools that you're not tracking, going through workflows that are not measured or difficult to measure, difficult to track. So you're tracking a machine, but you're not tracking everything else. So how do you get them to collaborate? How do you orchestrate, in other words, these operations? So it's a problem of orchestration between machine and men and tools and consumables and materials. This is the problem in almost any operational field, even in movies, that this is where is everything? Is the question you always ask. Where is that thing that we need today, right now on set? It's the same problem everywhere else. I'll give you an example. Human error is the biggest cause of downtime in any operation because machines, we have a lot of IoT data about machines and we know what's going on with them and we do a lot of predictive maintenance. So there is still, however, the problem of human error, which means essentially you either lost an item that you need, you can't find it, or something has been put in the wrong place. It comes down to these kinds of things.
Gives you, a bit of a perspective of how you can utilize data to track things and get insights of, how to optimize your operations, right? But how is it automating the workflows? I just wanted to get a bit more understanding of how does this Geogram platform helps to automate the processes? Like, yeah, would you just want to elaborate on that a little?
Yeah, great question. So when you look at, field of operations today, we have autonomous or semi-autonomous machines, right? Like you take the case of a mine, there's a truck that is autonomous or semi-autonomous that shifts things from the storage depot in the mine to the site of the face of the mine, for example. So when they blow up a part of the mine and they clear all the muck, they have to bring in drill rods and rolls of mesh, and they use the mesh to secure the mine, the face of the mine, so it doesn't cave in on people, right? And they can start extracting things out of it. Now, the truck, suppose, is automated or semi-autonomous, but there's still a human component there, which is there's a work order, on your daily schedule at such and such a time. I'm required to deliver these number of drill rods and these number of mesh rolls and any other number of pieces of, gear, equipment, consumable tools to the face of the mine. So typically people forget, oh, I forgot that. It's human error. I forgot. Did you get that, that package of bolts? Oh, I forgot those bolts. And they may discover a box of explosives sitting somewhere right along the path. What is this doing here? So, stuff happens. It's human. It sounds ridiculous, but it always happens. It's just when you get humans, people are not perfect, right? So how do we automate this? How do we make this efficient and error-free? Well, one of the things we can do is we can count and track everything with cameras at the site of loading to make sure everything is loaded. Nothing is forgotten. We can have a checklist, but we can actually autofill the checklist on your daily schedule. All of these have been loaded. Once it's been loaded, only then, some data team can just say, okay, it's been loaded. We can issue a notification or trigger to the machine to start and move.
So that can be automated. So that once
Automated.
you see that data is all there, the machine
Yeah.
can move basically.
It's the most
Wow.
basic kind of, data orchestration for an IoT team. Because our back end, one of the insights we had was we should just integrate with, IoT stacks in our back end. So then you're getting that basic, very familiar data. And now you can integrate it with all your other, you can integrate it with your analytics, your clustering and pattern detection and anomaly detection. You can do it in real time. You can do it for historical masses of data. You can, and you can trigger or not trigger machines to follow up on human actions, or
Yeah.
one machine that is operating under a different data stack. We're tracking it independently, its performance. And when you say that machine is completed, because that machine won't tell you if it's completed, or even it does, how do you integrate that data with someone else's data stack from another OEM? So we solve that problem,
Mm.
by giving you independent data about both. When machine A does this, machine B can be triggered to do that. It's those kinds of things that are very now become possible. So in fact, our customers are kind of twofold, and that's what we're learning in the pilot.
How long does it take for you, if you want to say set up this full platform and the cameras, how long does it take you to set up the whole thing? Like when you go to a different, like you're now doing to a pilot project in mining, if say you want to go to a different sector and set up the whole thing, is it a long process or is it like 1 or 2 day job for you to set up the whole thing?
Great question. And that's one of the questions that we're trying to answer during this pilot. So the process is simply that we scan the mine. We get a vendor to scan the mine, LiDAR scan with some imagery. And from that, we create a basic 3D map. And that map is geolocated. So, and that map is only geolocated, it's converted into a building information model. So this is something we learned from the construction sector now, and some of the work that we did there is that building information models are in different countries at different stages of adoption in the built environment, in the life cycle of the built environment. What it gives you is basically a 3D drawing of a building, a CAD drawing, but it comes with data labels for every component, and the very detailed. And building information models are used from everything from construction and workflow planning and daily schedules to managing a completed building, its operations and maintenance. What we found is that by applying that as our data structure and by geolocating that BIM model on a map, we get a very data-rich 3D map of that environment where you know the position of just about every component in that building. Okay. So now when we track objects that are moving in that building, we track them in a very data-rich context. Remember I was talking about context and how that now amplifies everything. So if you're already tracking the IoT from, in the BIM model, whether it's a mine or a building, now you're tracking all the other objects in relation to those IoT, to everything else, all the other components. And now you can measure the impact of what's happening physically, on things you have not been tracking before with the performance, with, power consumption monitoring, and, anything else that you need to track. So all of this takes time depending on the complexity of the space. For a mine, what we're looking at is it has to be very fast because mines continually evolve. They're constantly
Mhm.
expanding the mine. So where the complexity is in actually the scanning. It's in third-party tools. And so what we're really focused on in this implementation is how do we accelerate scanning and the workflows for creating a very basic BIM model of that mine and putting it on a map, so that the map of the mine keeps growing as the mine grows. And so
So
then
do
we
you
can
have to scan again, or is it like a scan at the initial, that same thing, like after 2 months, the mine has completely changed?
it
Do you
won't
need to scan
completely
again,
change
or
your
is it?
different new sections. So you need to scan that. So we're trying to reduce that into a 2 to 3 hour operation from
Wow.
scan to geolocated 3D digital twin that now you can, track in and you can put up cameras. Putting up cameras is not the hard part. We use the digital twin for planning the layout of cameras. You can already design that once you get that, and you can that digital twin becomes the kind of manual for people on the ground to put up the cameras and which cameras they should put where.
Yeah, so you would know, right? Once you have the full map, where to place the cameras exactly to give you the full picture, right? Yeah.
And it gives complete interoperability, and collaboration between those on site and those who are working remotely.
Mm.
And so that's really what it's one of the benefits of this is because both remote and, you know, on-site user can use their devices to access the same data.
Yeah. So are you looking outside Canada as well, or is it just right now your focus is in Canada, or are you looking outside?
Indeed, we are. Canada and the US is one place where mining is still very strong. And again, to get back to the idea of sustainability, you have to look for entering in sectors that can sustain you and in markets, or territories that are near at hand. Because the further away something is, the more expensive it is, and the more likelihood you might, and I look at who are the partners that we're working with. So if we're working with engineering firms, for example, and they become, in a sense, the integrators and implementers of our solution, which is what I'm hoping, then they already have operations in other countries. So that's a way for us to scale more quickly, because we also
Right. I mean,
realize.
you can give that implementation work to some other engineering firms. Like if you physically can't go to those locations, you can just kind of contract that kind of work for them to implement it, your
Absolutely. I
technologies.
mean, we think engineering firms can actually be our go-to-market partners, and because for us, it's, we have a solution, we validate it and we continue to validate it. And our job is really to deliver the data that
Mm.
enables this kind of AI that can help orchestrate and automate physical operations, the physical world, and that is geospatial time series data on the location of things and their state. This is kind of the basic knowledge you need to have in real time if you're going to automate anything. So if we say we can deliver that with confidence, and here is how you implement this solution, we're looking to provide that to those companies that then can go forward and implement that.
And if I'm understanding this right, like you are just trying to validate your product in one place and you can gather all that data and give it to other engineering firms and use that to do
Indeed.
to get more insights. Is it to understand how it all works, or do they still get that equipment and implement that same solution on different sites?
Well, I mean, it is site specific because every site is unique, every
Yeah,
mine
so
is
you
unique.
still have to implement that, right? At a different
Yep,
site,
you
the
have to,
same.
so
Yeah.
some of the problems we're trying to solve, for example, are what are the optimal cameras for this environment? Because
Yeah.
we work with monocular cameras. We're just using $100 cameras that we're buying off of Amazon. In fact, they're $60 cameras with night vision and fog vision, but they're just standard regular cameras. No LiDAR, no RGB depth, they're just standard cameras. So we say, okay, we have these cameras, what kind of objects are we tracking? What is the smallest object we have to track? And what is the furthest camera to that object? Because we need to know distances. You need to be able to see the thing, and every camera has its coverage area. So these are some of the kinds of questions that we're asking and solving for so that we can have a kind of a blueprint for here are the, data points you need to have, in order to, spit out a kind of workflow or layout plan, an implementation plan for this site. And so these are the ways that we approach it.
So what are some of the challenges now you do see, like to scale your business now? Like what are some of the challenges in here? Like once you validated a model, how do you grow this business and take it to different sectors or different places? What challenges you see right now?
There's interesting scaling anything, it comes with its own challenges, and there's, two types of challenges. First, we have data around mines, specifically underground mines at the end of this pilot. That would just lead to buyer education campaign and a marketing campaign and a sales campaign. And these are not new, and
Yeah.
this we know about, and that campaign would be directed again, both to the end customer, their, the firms that are already serving them, to the OEMs and the vendors that they're using. It's really building brand awareness and building out a funnel that gets them into your, to your flow, into your sales flow, and making offers, and figuring out your offers. A lot of that will come out of the pilot, and that we keep refining. And so the scalability there comes into something that is maybe more familiar. Going to another sector with solutions implemented in one sector is really where you start looking at the engineering companies that you're working with. Okay, because to go direct to the customer with that is again gets into challenging spaces, because unlike a purely digital play, when you get into physical operations, you're getting into trades, work, trades management, workers who are tradespeople and very knowledgeable about their jobs and also used to certain workflows and methods.
That's really interesting. So, I mean, what are the some of your growth plans now for the next 6 to 12 months? Where do you want to see Geogram go now? How do you see this yourself?
In the next 6 to 12 months, really, we'd like to succeed at, complete an excellent pilot with some, stakeholders that are really engaged and have the data to prove, what our objective is that we're going to increase yields in a mine from 2% to 5% annually. And that is millions of dollars for a gold or copper mine. And we'd like to, over the next 12 months, acquire a bunch of customers, who will become, we hope, our evangelists to that community and help us scale. That's really a 1 year plan is very focused. you know.
Yeah. So but that is kind of focused in the mining industry itself.
Agreed. So we're not making any outbound
Yeah,
efforts.
to the other sectors at the such. Yeah.
But if someone is interested who's listening to this podcast, I'd be happy to talk to them, because we are always looking to see where else we can be useful. And I know we can be useful in building management and operations, because
Right.
we've already talked to enough customers around that. But here in Canada, there's a basic downturn in construction. A few years. It's been going on for a year or two, and it's going to keep going for a while. So, we feel like these are spaces that we could be useful in. We'd be very useful in spaces where customer flow, people flow is
That
really
is important.
is important because we've solved certain intractable problems, in the space. Like typically when something is detected by one camera, you don't know if it's the same thing that is detected by another camera if it drops out of the field of view. So we've solved that problem. We can redetect objects that have been lost from sight and with a great confidence score tell you it's the same person or it's a different person. We can differentiate between objects of the same class that are right side by side, like 100 chairs in a room, identical chairs. We can tell you each chair, and separate each chair into a unique object. So these are some of the problems that we, solve. We can tell you the state of an object, which RFID tags don't, and the state of the object. When you say a state of an object in physical world, what does that mean? Well, location is part of its state, but more importantly, its pose, which means, what is its angle? Where is it looking at? What is the front and what is the top and what is the bottom? Is it standing? If it's a person, is that person standing or have they fallen? If they've fallen,
Yeah.
have they gotten up again? How long have they remained fallen? These are the kinds of, this is the kind of data we give. We can tell you, some, understanding of its condition.
Yeah, that's so interesting, Srinivas. I think, yeah, there was really some good insights in there. So, I mean, just a last question to you. What is one piece of advice you would want to give to some other founders or entrepreneurs who are starting out in the industry and wanted to scale their businesses? What you have learned over the years is would be something valuable for us.
Well, yeah, I think the one thing that, it's not anything new, but in terms of entering a market and scaling in a market or growing your business, you really have to look at your differentiation, okay, from everyone else in that space. You can't really worry too much about the competition, you need to know if obviously who your customers are, who your ICP is, but you really need to understand one, your value proposition, and two, your differentiation. How are you different? And this is something that I realized in hindsight, as I said at the beginning of our, conversation, was what really helped me. Because I came into IT, technology and services as an artist, as a filmmaker, storyteller, someone who understood a lot about cameras, and I had a pretty good mind for math, but it's not anything I was trained in. But what I brought was the ability for my team and my customers to differentiate themselves from everyone else because I had a different perspective. And so it's really useful and that differentiation rather has to be authentic. You can't fake it, right?
Yeah,
It has to be something that comes from you. So gaining self-knowledge, of yourself, like what are your strengths and what are really your limitations, and gives you a lot of confidence because you're not going to do everything. It also teaches you who to work with because you're going to work with people whose strengths are your limitations, who complement you, and
exactly.
you're gonna know who to look out for. You're gonna recognize that in your customers too, that your strengths are their limitations, and so you're gonna see how you can fit with them and the value propositions you're going to deliver to them and the arguments around why they should work with you because of your differentiation. I think these are the core things to focus on always that set you apart, and give you a leg to stand on in what is increasingly a very complex and, challenging business environment.
Yeah. Right. Thank you so much, Srinivas. Uh, Tell us where the audiences can find you. Where do we see Geogram? Is it just on your website? And how do they get in touch with you if they're looking at this podcast?
Audiences, anyone can get in touch with me always by going to our website, geogram.xyz, and just reaching out to us at hello@geogram.xyz or me personally at skrishna@geogram.co. I'm the
I'll
easiest
yeah put
person.
that all in the
And you can find
yeah.
me on LinkedIn, and all my contact details are on LinkedIn. I don't hide it. I'm very easy to reach.
Thank you so much, Srinivas. Yeah, it was lovely chatting to you. Some really good insights in there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nishant. This was a great pleasure.